Have you ever held on to a dream for so long that it seemed impossible to come true? Have you ever written something on a piece of paper without imagining that it could one day become reality? What if I told you that a little girl of just 9 years old wrote down the greatest desire of her life, and 20 years later, everything happened in the smallest details? This is not just an ordinary story. It is a real, deep, and moving account of how the law of attraction can transform someone's life. A story that shows how the universe responds to sincere desires, even when time seems to erase hope. And our main character is Andy Parker. Andy was born in a small town in the United States. The only child of hardworking parents, she grew up surrounded by simplicity, but also by a lot of love. Her mother was a teacher at a local school, and her father worked as a carpenter. Their home never had luxuries, but there was something that made all the difference: an environment full of encouragement to dream. From a young age, Andy showed extraordinary imagination. She loved writing stories, creating imaginary worlds, and drawing possible futures. Her teachers were always impressed by her creativity and, above all, by her way of believing that anything was possible. But it was on a specific afternoon, when she was only 9 years old, that something would forever mark her life. That day, her teacher asked each student to write in a notebook what the biggest dream of their life was. While some children wrote about toys, trips, or temporary things, Andy paused for a few minutes, looked out the classroom window, and took a deep breath. She picked up her pencil and wrote with all the conviction that a 9-year-old could have. "When I grow up, I will live in a big city, work with books, find the love of my life, and build a happy family. I will live near the sea, in a bright house full of windows, and I will be very, very happy." She couldn't explain where that clarity came from. She just felt that this was what she wanted, and somehow she believed it could be possible. After class, she put the blue notebook in her backpack, took it home, and hid it in a drawer in her room. This seemingly simple gesture would mark the beginning of a 20-year journey. What Andy didn't know at the time was that by writing clearly and in detail what she wanted, she was activating one of the greatest secrets of the law of attraction: shaping a desire through the written word. Research shows that when you write down a goal, the chance of achieving it increases significantly because the brain starts registering it as a possible reality. For Andy, that writing was not just a school exercise, but a silent promise to herself. As she grew, Andy continued to dream. She kept magazine clippings of houses near the sea, read novels about true love, and spent hours drawing landscapes of places where she wished to live. However, real life didn't always seem to follow the plan. Her adolescence was marked by financial difficulties at home. Her father faced health problems, and her mother had to work 2 jobs to support the family. Andy, even at such a young age, had to grow up quickly, helping at home and putting some dreams aside to prioritize responsibilities. Many times, she would look at the blue notebook hidden in the drawer and wonder, will this ever happen, or was it just a child's fantasy? It was at the age of 15 that Andy, for the first time, heard more clearly about the law of attraction. A distant aunt gave her a self-help book about how thoughts shape reality. Andy read every page carefully and was fascinated by the idea that the universe responds to what we think and feel. She immediately recognized what she had done at 9 years old. "I wrote down my dream. I put it on paper as if it were real." At that moment, she decided that she would never completely abandon that vision. Even if life was hard, even if everything seemed far away, Andy believed it had a higher purpose. Andy's youth was marked with ups and downs. At 17, she earned a scholarship to study literature at a university. At 20, she moved to a larger city, where she began to experience independent life. She worked as a waitress to support herself, but never gave up her passion for books. Despite the progress, Andy also faced disappointments. Her first serious relationship ended painfully, leaving her with the feeling that true love might not be for her. In moments like these, Andy remembered the words written in the blue notebook and asked herself, "Has the universe forgotten me? Am I wrong to believe?" One day, at the age of 21, Andy returned home for the holidays and found the blue notebook in the drawer where she had hidden it years before. Upon opening and rereading the words written by her 9-year-old self, something inside her awakened. It was as if that child, with all her purity and faith, was reminding the young adult that the dreams were still alive. Andy cried when she realized that despite so many difficulties, her desire remained the same: to live near the sea, work with books, find the love of her life, and build a happy family. After that reunion, Andy began paying more attention to signs. Whenever she saw houses near the beach and advertisements, her heart raced. Passing by bookstores, she felt a different energy. Hearing stories of people who had found lasting love filled her with hope. It was as if the universe was constantly reminding her of what was to come, even when she couldn't see the full picture. And so, we end the first part of this journey. Andy Parker, at 9 years old, wrote her greatest dream in a simple blue notebook. At 21, she found that notebook again and realized that despite all obstacles, that vision still pulsed within her. But the question remains, will she truly be able to manifest in every detail what she wrote as a child? The universe was just beginning to move, and the next chapters will show how each choice, each thought, and each act of faith brought her step by step closer to the realization of her dream. When Andy returned to university after rediscovering the old blue notebook, something in her heart felt different. That memory of the child who believed without doubt that the universe could give her exactly what she wanted ignited a flame she no longer wanted to extinguish. For the first time in years, she felt she was not simply living to survive. There was a purpose. Every morning upon waking, she would close her eyes for a few minutes and try to imagine herself living the life she had written down at 9. It was an exercise that brought comfort and hope. In her mind, she saw herself walking on a beach, feeling the gentle wind on her face, living in a bright house full of windows, and working surrounded by books. Curiously, although her reality was completely different, every time she did this exercise, it felt possible. During literature classes, Andy fell more and more in love with the universe of words. Studying great writers, analyzing classical and modern works, and learning about the power of stories only reinforced her belief that dreams can shape destinies. Often, between readings, she remembered her own writing in the blue notebook. She realized that unknowingly, she had used the same power so many writers described: imagination. The more she connected with it, the more she felt that there was something special in the simple act of believing. But adult life was not easy. While attending university, Andy had to work long hours in a busy cafe to pay part of her bills. Many times, she returned to the small room she rented downtown exhausted, her feet sore and her hands still smelling of coffee, thinking that maybe it was too much to dream so big. How could someone in such a simple condition imagine a house near the sea or a life surrounded by love and abundance? Yet, whenever doubt approached, she remembered the silent promise she had made to herself: "I will achieve it. The universe is on my side." It was during this period that Andy began consciously practicing techniques she had read about in books on the law of attraction. She started writing positive affirmations daily in a journal. She would tell herself phrases like, "I am worthy of true love," "I am attracting amazing opportunities into my life," "I deserve abundance and happiness." At first, repeating words that didn't match her visible reality felt strange. But she remembered something she had learned. The brain does not distinguish imagination from reality. The more she believed, the more aligned she became with the energy of what she wanted to attract. A few months later, small changes began to occur. Andy got an internship at a local publishing house, something that had seemed unlikely for someone without connections in the field. She remembered writing that she wanted to work with books, and there she was, surrounded by manuscripts, editors, and stories being prepared to reach the world. The salary was modest, but for Andy it was more than money. It was a sign that she was on the right path. However, love still seemed distant. At 22, Andy had a few short relationships, but none reflected what she had dreamed of as a child. Instead of becoming discouraged, she decided to apply the same practice she used in her career. She began imagining the feeling of being in a healthy, true relationship. She didn't visualize a specific face, but the feelings she wanted to experience: security, companionship, respect, and joy. Sometimes before sleeping, she would close her eyes and feel as if she were already embraced by someone who truly loved her. Friends would laugh when she mentioned these practices, saying it was a waste of time. But Andy knew something greater was happening. And indeed, the universe seemed to respond in unexpected ways. One day, on her way home from work, she discovered a small bookstore tucked away on a street she had never noticed before. Upon entering, she immediately felt at home. The smell of books, the soft background music, the owner's kindness. It was as if she had been guided there. She decided to return often, and the place became a refuge. It was also in this space that she began to realize the importance of being open to opportunities. Each time she browsed books on spirituality, personal development, and stories of transformation, Andy reinforced her faith in the law of attraction. She realized she was not alone, that many people around the world had already experienced similar journeys. It was as if the universe was constantly sending reminders not to give up. Still, there were dark days. Moments when money barely covered the bills, when loneliness weighed heavily, and when the future seemed distant. In those times, Andy would cry silently, asking the universe if she was truly being heard. But something inside her, a gentle voice, always replied, "Keep believing. Everything is aligning." Over the years, Andy realized that the law of attraction wasn't just about imagining and waiting. It required aligning action with intention. So she decided to invest in herself. She took writing courses, improved her skills, and dedicated herself to the internship with such commitment that she was soon hired full-time. The work gave her increasing confidence that her desire to live surrounded by books was becoming a reality. Yet one important part of the dream remained unfinished: living near the sea. Andy lived in a large, gray city, full of buildings, where the ocean seemed like a distant reality. Many times, while walking to university or work, she would close her eyes for a few seconds and imagine hearing the sound of the waves, feeling the scent of the sea. This simple exercise brought her peace and kept the flame of the dream alive. At 25, Andy began to notice something curious. Whenever she spoke out loud about her plans, people reacted skeptically. "A house by the sea? That's for the rich, Andy. True love? That's just in movies. A happy and abundant life? You need to be more realistic." For a while, these comments hurt. But soon she understood that if she truly wanted to manifest what she desired, she had to shield herself from the negative beliefs of others. She began speaking less about her dreams and cultivating them in silence, as a secret between herself and the universe. That same year, something extraordinary happened. Andy was invited to participate in a literary project that required trips to coastal cities. The first time she saw the sea up close, a shiver ran through her entire body. She spent hours walking on the sand, in silence, simply absorbing the feeling that she was getting closer and closer to the life she had written in the blue notebook. When she returned home, she decided to paste a photo of that place on her bedroom wall to remind herself daily that it was her destiny. In love, Andy continued practicing visualization, but progress seemed slow. Until one day, at a literary event, she met someone who made her feel something different. His name was Daniel. They talked about books, shared dreams, and connected immediately. Andy felt that there was something special, but at the same time she was afraid of believing too much. She decided to let things flow, remembering that the universe always delivers at the right time. The following months were marked by profound transformations. Andy remained focused on her career, but now she also learned about patience, surrender, and trust. With every challenge, she remembered the words written in the blue notebook. 20 years might seem like a long time, but for the universe, there was no rush. Everything was happening exactly as it should. And so, without realizing it, Andy was getting closer and closer to living in every detail what she had dreamed of at 9 years old. The blue notebook was no longer just a childhood memory, but a silent map that the universe was following step by step. What she didn't know yet was that the following years would be the most decisive of her life. When Andy met Daniel at that literary event, she had no idea that what seemed like a casual encounter would become a turning point in her life. He wasn't exactly what she had pictured in her mind. He didn't look like the character she had imagined for years, nor did he have the profession she had dreamed of for an ideal partner. But there was something about him that awakened a sense of familiarity that was hard to explain. It was as if she had known him from somewhere before, as if their souls recognized each other instantly. The conversation they had that afternoon felt so natural that Andy left the event with the feeling that she had reconnected with someone who had been in her life in another time, in another reality. In the following days, they started exchanging messages. They discovered they liked the same authors, shared the habit of writing small reflections in notebooks, and had similar dreams about traveling and exploring new places. Gradually, a friendship formed, and from that friendship, a deeper bond emerged. Andy, however, carried a mix of fear and hope. Even though she felt a special connection, she still bore emotional scars from past disappointments and feared giving herself completely. It was during this phase that the practice of the law of attraction became even more essential in her life. Instead of focusing on her insecurities, Andy sought daily to direct her energy toward feelings of gratitude and trust. In her meditations, she didn't visualize Daniel specifically, but the feeling of being in a healthy, stable, and loving relationship. She repeated to herself that she deserved to experience this love, and that the universe was already taking care of making everything unfold at the right time. Daniel, in turn, showed increasing interest. They began going out together, first to quiet cafes, then for walks in parks, and later to evenings that extended late into the night, talking about life, dreams, and the fears each carried. Andy was surprised to realize that she could be vulnerable with him, something she rarely allowed. Daniel listened attentively, validated her feelings, and never tried to rush anything. This calmness, this patience, made Andy relax and feel that she was in good hands. However, like every transformative journey, the universe seemed to want to test her. A few months after they had started this bond, Daniel received a job offer in another city, nearly 4 hours away. He was torn. The opportunity was good, but it meant being apart from her just as they were getting close. When Andy heard the news, her heart tightened. Part of her wanted to ask him to refuse, but another, wiser part understood that she could not hold someone or control circumstances. She remembered the lessons she so often repeated to herself: trust, surrender, and believe that everything happens for a reason. They decided to maintain a long-distance relationship, which was not easy. There were days of silence, moments when insecurity took over, and nights when Andy cried alone, wondering if she was about to lose someone who could be an important part of her story. Curiously, it was also during this phase that she learned to strengthen her faith even more. Instead of despairing, she wrote in her journal all the good feelings she had about the relationship. She described her gratitude for having met him, recorded the happy moments they had shared, and imagined herself living alongside him in the near future. And something interesting happened. Despite the distance, their connection did not diminish. On the contrary, it seemed to intensify. Daniel called almost every day, shared details of his new routine, and always made a point to ask about Andy's projects. There was a consistency in his gestures that brought reassurance. Slowly, Andy began to realize that perhaps what she had written in the blue notebook was starting to materialize, even if in a way different from what she had imagined. Meanwhile, her career was also advancing. At the publishing house, she received the opportunity to lead a small project, something that filled her with pride. It was as if the universe was balancing all areas of her life, showing that she could have love and success at the same time. However, the most striking moment was realizing that the city Daniel had moved to was near the coast. When she visited him for the first time and the sea appeared before her eyes, Andy felt she was witnessing yet another clear sign. The universe seemed to be playing with her, aligning pieces that confirmed, one by one, what she had written 2 decades ago. On that trip, there was one moment in particular that remained etched in her memory. Walking along the beach with Daniel, feeling the cold sand under her feet, Andy remembered the 9-year-old girl who had written in a blue notebook that she wanted to live near the sea. Although it wasn't yet her permanent home, being there, hand in hand with someone who made her feel safe and happy, seemed like a prelude to what was to come. But not everything was perfect. Andy still carried deep fears within her, inner voices questioning whether she deserved all of this. On lonely nights, far from Daniel, she wondered if she was idealizing too much, if she risked seeing everything fall apart. The weight of responsibilities at work also increased, and sometimes the overload made her doubt herself. Yet, instead of giving up, she used these moments of fragility as fuel to strengthen her faith. She told herself that every challenge was just another step toward the full realization of her dream. What surprised Andy the most was noticing how the details were beginning to align perfectly. She remembered writing that she wanted to work with books, and now she not only worked with them but was beginning to gain recognition in her field. She remembered wanting to live near the sea, and suddenly the person she was falling in love with had moved to a coastal city. She remembered wanting to build a happy family, and although it was still early to think about that concretely, she began to see in Daniel someone with whom that could be possible. With each coincidence, with each synchronicity, her gratitude grew. Andy learned to be thankful even for the difficult moments, understanding that they were an essential part of the process. When she cried from longing, she said to herself, "I am learning to be strong." When she faced criticism at work, she reminded herself, "I am learning to believe in myself." When anxiety tried to overwhelm her, she repeated, "The universe is taking care of everything." This balance between faith and action began to transform her energy from the inside out. Friends started noticing that Andy seemed lighter, more confident, more radiant. And inside, she knew she was finally learning to live according to what she had written, not just waiting for the universe to act, but collaborating with it in every thought, every choice, and every action. Thus, between long-distance meetings, visits to the seaside, work challenges, and moments of introspection, Andy continued writing her own story. She still didn't know how everything would unfold, but one thing was certain: she was getting closer and closer to living in every detail the dream she had recorded in the blue notebook when she was just 9 years old. Little did she know, the coming years would bring events that would intensely test her faith, but would also lead to the ultimate confirmation that the universe never forgets a true desire. Andy and Daniel's relationship seemed to follow a natural flow, as if each step were carefully orchestrated by destiny. But like every story marked by major transformations, the universe was about to test the strength of what they were building. After several months of frequent visits, daily messages, and silent promises, the rhythm began to shift. Daniel's increasingly demanding work consumed long hours of his days. Often he stayed late at the office, and when he finally called Andy, he was too tired to talk. The affectionate tone of before was gradually replaced by a hurried, distant voice. Andy, in turn, was experiencing a period of intense growth at the publishing house. New projects demanded her full attention, and she spent hours immersed in manuscripts, meetings, and tight deadlines. At first, they both tried not to give importance to these signs. But gradually, the weight of the distance and exhausting routines began to create space for insecurities. Andy felt Daniel was pulling away, and it made her question if the universe was playing a trick on her. At night, alone in her small apartment, she quietly cried, remembering the blue notebook. Is this really it? Is he the love of my life, or just part of the journey? Her heart tightened, and doubts corroded her faith. Daniel, too, had his anxieties. He wanted to be more present, but his new position required him to prove himself daily. He feared losing Andy, but didn't know how to balance career and relationship. In their conversations, misunderstandings began to surface. Small differences turned into long arguments, and sometimes they hung up the phone without resolving anything. Andy, who had always preached the importance of trusting the universe, found herself immersed in thoughts of scarcity. What if I lose everything? What if none of my dreams come true? It was at this critical moment that she decided to return to the essentials. She picked up the old blue notebook, which she kept like a treasure, and reread the words written by the 9-year-old girl. Live near the sea, work with books, find the love of my life, and build a happy family. A shiver ran down her spine. She realized that even amid the turbulence, she had already achieved important parts of that dream. She worked with books, she was closer to the sea than ever before, and in some way, she had attracted Daniel. If part of the dream had already been fulfilled, why doubt that the rest would come too? This reflection shifted her energy. In the years following her youth, Andy's life took paths she had never planned, yet somehow always connected to what was written in her blue notebook. At 20, while studying at a small university, she encountered the harsh realities of adulthood: bills to pay, social expectations, heartbreaks, and the pressure to define who she would become in the future. It seemed as if the world wanted her to forget her childhood dreams and conform to the practical logic of survival. Yet inside her, something still pulled her toward that piece of paper she had kept so carefully. One night, after an especially tough day in which she had lost an internship she considered essential, Andy returned to her room, sat on the bed, and opened the box where she kept her mementos. Among photos, letters, and small objects lay the blue notebook. The paper was yellowed, but the words written at 9 years old seemed alive. She read every line and for the first time felt an inner shock. Everything she had written still made sense. It wasn't just a naive child's wish, it was a call from her soul. At that moment, she decided that, no matter how long it took, she would commit fully to living as if that dream were already on its way. Andy immersed herself in books on spirituality, personal development, and especially the law of attraction. She discovered authors who spoke of the importance of visualization, vibration, gratitude, and unwavering faith. Every page seemed to confirm that what she had done at 9, writing and feeling as if she had already lived it, was the key to everything. This understanding strengthened her and made her realize that waiting was not a punishment, but part of constructing her destiny. Yet life continued to test her patience. At 22, she had a relationship she believed was the beginning of the fulfillment of what she had written, but it turned out to be an illusion. At 24, she faced financial difficulties, juggling 2 jobs while studying. There were moments she cried alone, wondering if she was deceiving herself by believing in something that seemed so distant. But even in her tears, she returned to the blue notebook, spoke the words aloud, and remembered how she had felt when writing them. It was this emotional memory that kept her strong. Over time, Andy developed daily rituals. She rewrote every day about her dream life, as if it were already reality. She created mental scenarios so vivid that she could smell the breakfast in her dream home, hear the laughter of the person she imagined by her side, and even feel the texture of the embrace she longed for. Sometimes she woke up feeling that everything was already present. These were not fantasies, they were vibrational rehearsals shaping her energy to attract what she desired. In this process, something curious began to happen. At 26, Andy noticed that small details she had written at 9 were manifesting. Seemingly random situations brought phrases, places, or events described in that old paper. It was as if the universe were sending signs that she was on the right path. And even without the grand manifestation she still expected, each sign strengthened her faith and made her give thanks even more intensely. Most impressively, the more she practiced gratitude, the more opportunities appeared in her life. An unexpected trip, a transformative friendship, a job seemingly tailored to her skills. The message was clear: something greater was in motion. Andy understood it was not a question of if it would happen, but when. She continued steadfast on her journey, believing that the promise written with innocence and courage at 9 held too much power to be ignored. Every challenge, every fall, every new beginning was part of the invisible staircase leading her to the destiny that had been drawn since childhood. By 29, the blue notebook was no longer just a childhood memory, but the symbol of unwavering faith that sustained her. And without realizing it, Andy was about to enter the most surprising chapter of her life, the moment when everything she had written would begin to take shape before her eyes. At 23, Andy was no longer the insecure young woman who believed her destiny was far from fulfillment. The childhood notebook she had kept as a treasure had transformed into a secret guide for her life. Every word written at 9 seemed to carry an inexplicable magnetism. And although not everything had manifested yet, she felt closer than ever. During this period, Andy began working at a small bookstore in the city center. Surrounded by stories, symbols, and ideas that had traversed centuries, the environment seemed to nourish her from within. Among the old shelves and conversations with curious customers, she found inspiration to continue believing in her journey. At night, upon returning home, she dedicated a few minutes to what she called her sacred moment. Opening the notebook, rereading what she had written as a child, closing her eyes, and visualizing with intensity. She imagined the touch of a hand, the look of complicity, the environment of a shared life. It wasn't a forced visualization, but a gentle surrender, as if she were already living that reality. However, even with all her faith, challenges continued to arise. Andy began to feel the social pressure from friends who were already in serious relationships or even married. Often in conversations, she heard subtle jokes about how she seemed to be waiting for a prince who would never come. Though said in jest, these words weighed on her mind. There were nights when she cried silently, wondering if she was trapped in a childish illusion. Is it a mistake to dream of something so specific? Should I just settle for anything so I'm not alone? She asked herself. But whenever these thoughts arose, she returned to the notebook. She touched the pages, yellowed by time, remembered the 9-year-old girl who had written with such conviction, and told herself, if she believed, I cannot give up. It was in this process of duality between doubt and faith that Andy began to delve even deeper into the law of attraction. She bought books, watched lectures, and wrote down phrases that resonated with her heart. One of them became her personal mantra: "The universe never fails, it only moves at the right time." She repeated this phrase in her mind whenever impatience arose. Gradually, her faith shifted from mere hope to a calm, almost serene trust. One rainy afternoon at the bookstore, Andy met a woman named Grace. She had come in to escape the storm, but ended up starting a conversation about a self-help book in the window. The connection between them was immediate. Grace seemed to carry an unusual wisdom, as if she could see beyond the obvious. Over a cup of tea and many stories, she said something that would change her perspective. "Dear, when you wrote your desires as a child, you planted a seed in the universe. And what is planted with true faith does not die. It may take years, but it blooms. Your part is to keep watering it, even if the soil seems dry." These words sparked something inside her. Andy began to see her waiting not as a burden, but as a process. She understood that while waiting for the manifestation of her great dream, the universe was shaping her, refining every detail so that she would be ready. She began to see her days differently, appreciating even the smallest signs, an unexpected coincidence, a phrase that appeared repeatedly, even dreams that seemed to carry hidden messages. All of this reinforced her conviction that she was on the right path. By 25, Andy had completely transformed her mindset. What had once been a burden was now a journey of self-discovery and faith. She had understood that the law of attraction is not just about receiving something, but about becoming someone capable of sustaining what she desires. Looking back, she realized that without the moments of solitude, she might not have developed the clarity she now possessed. The childhood notebook remained her anchor, but the woman she had become was the one truly giving life to those words. And although she had not yet seen the exact fulfillment of her dream, within her was already an unshakable certainty the universe was about to surprise her. In this process, something curious began to happen. At 26, Andy noticed that small details she had written at 9 were manifesting. Seemingly random situations brought phrases, places, or events described in that old paper. It was as if the universe were sending signs that she was on the right path. And even without the grand manifestation she still expected, each sign strengthened her faith and made her give thanks even more intensely. Most impressively, the more she practiced gratitude, the more opportunities appeared in her life. An unexpected trip, a transformative friendship, a job seemingly tailored to her skills. The message was clear: something greater was in motion. Andy understood it was not a question of if it would happen, but when. She continued steadfast on her journey, believing that the promise written with innocence and courage at 9 held too much power to be ignored. Every challenge, every fall, every new beginning was part of the invisible staircase leading her to the destiny that had been drawn since childhood. By 29, the blue notebook was no longer just a childhood memory, but the symbol of unwavering faith that sustained her. And without realizing it, Andy was about to enter the most surprising chapter of her life, the moment when everything she had written would begin to take shape before her eyes. At 23, Andy was no longer the insecure young woman who believed her destiny was far from fulfillment. The childhood notebook she had kept as a treasure had transformed into a secret guide for her life. Every word written at 9 seemed to carry an inexplicable magnetism. And although not everything had manifested yet, she felt closer than...
At this stage of her life, Andy had learned that the law of attraction was not about waiting for miracles to fall from the sky, but about aligning her thoughts, emotions, and actions with what she wished to live. Even so, as strong as she had become, she faced moments of doubt. Some nights, lying in bed after long days of work, she recalled the diary she had kept since age 9 and asked herself, "Will it really happen? Am I on the right path, or is this all just a childhood illusion?" These doubts, though painful, were natural, and Andy knew she needed to face them without letting them dominate her mind. Instead of repressing them, she used them as reminders to return to her daily practice of visualization, gratitude, and unwavering faith. As she walked through this phase of emotional highs and lows, she noticed that life was subtly beginning to respond to her vibrations. Small signs appeared in ordinary situations: a song on the radio that described exactly what she felt, a scene in a movie that mirrored the love story she had written years ago, or even a conversation with a friend who, unknowingly, spoke words that seemed like direct messages from the universe. These signs, though subtle, rekindled her hope and reminded her that everything was in motion, even if behind the invisible scenes of reality. Andy also learned the importance of detachment. She understood that no matter how many details she had written in her diary, the universe did not need to follow that exact script to deliver something even better. This realization brought an unexpected lightness. Instead of yearning and trying to control every step, she began to open herself to the idea that destiny had a greater intelligence than her own, capable of orchestrating perfect encounters and moments at the right time. It was in this state of confident surrender that Andy allowed herself to live more fully, enjoying every moment without the sense of waiting for something. And it was precisely when she stopped waiting and simply started living that the first significant movements began to emerge. One day, during a personal development lecture she decided to attend at the last minute, something different happened. The energy of the place was vibrant. The speaker's words seemed to speak directly to her heart, and Andy left with a renewed sense of purpose. But what stood out most was not the lecture itself. It was the presence of someone in the audience she had not yet met, but who, in some way, already seemed connected to her story. At that moment, without exchanging a single word, Andy felt a kind of silent recognition. It was not yet the definitive encounter that would transform her life, but it was as if the universe was giving her a preview, a glimpse of what was to come. Her heart raced, not with anxiety, but with a profound feeling that she was exactly where she was meant to be. What Andy did not know was that from that moment on, every choice, every small step, and every sign that appeared on her path would inexorably lead her to the fulfillment of the promise she had made to herself at 9 years old.
That year, Andy was no longer just a dreamer writing in diaries. She had become a woman who saw her life gradually aligning with what she deeply believed. Work had brought her stability, and the sense of scarcity that had accompanied her youth was beginning to fade. It was as if a new chapter were being written, yet the promise of something greater remained intact, waiting for the right moment. Her days were filled with commitments, meetings, and responsibilities. But amid this routine, Andy maintained a sacred space just for herself, the silence of the mornings. Before the world awoke, she closed her eyes, took a deep breath, and allowed herself to feel the vibration of everything that had not yet happened but already lived inside her. She saw herself walking hand in hand, smiling, exchanging knowing glances. The remarkable thing was that the image did not fade over time. On the contrary, it became increasingly clear, almost tangible. But, as life often likes to test, it was precisely when Andy seemed most aligned that trials began to appear. Close friends started questioning her choices. "Do you still believe in that kind of thing? Don't you think you're too old to wait for fairy tales?" At first, she smiled and let it pass, but inside, those words scratched at her confidence. There were days when she caught herself wondering if she was being too naive. In those moments, the diary became her refuge again. Opening those old pages, written by the 9-year-old girl, Andy remembered something powerful: the purity of childlike faith, the kind that does not doubt, does not overanalyze, that simply believes. One morning, after a night in which the weight of uncertainties had become almost unbearable, Andy decided to change her approach. Instead of just visualizing, she began to write as if she were already living that reality. "Today, I woke up next to him. We had breakfast together, laughed at little things. He looked at me as if the world stopped for a moment." By writing this way, something inside her transformed. It was no longer a wish sent to the universe, but an experience lived in her imagination with such intensity that her body reacted as if it were real. Her heart raced, her eyes filled with tears of gratitude, and an involuntary smile appeared on her lips. The universe, silent and mysterious, seemed to respond to every act of surrender. Small signs began to manifest. First, a song played on the radio while she was driving, exactly the one she had associated with their meeting in her visualizations. Then a billboard appeared with the phrase, "What you are waiting for is also waiting for you." Andy pulled over that day and cried alone, feeling that she was not crazy, not alone, that something greater was in motion. Yet the tests did not cease. Invitations to relationships that seemed promising arrived, but they did not carry the essence of what she felt to be true. With every encounter that didn't fit, Andy reminded herself of her promise. "I will only accept what resonates with my soul." It was difficult. Often loneliness felt harsher than any illusion. But even in her weakest moments, she returned to the diary and reaffirmed, "I know it's coming. I know it's already mine." Time passed, and with it, the lessons deepened. Andy began to understand that it was not just about waiting for someone to arrive, but about becoming herself, the version that was already living that love. She started taking better care of herself, healing her own wounds, nurturing an inner love she had never experienced. She discovered that being whole did not mean needing no one, but rather not depending on anyone to feel complete. This understanding brought a different kind of peace, a silence that replaced anxiety and opened space for serene confidence. It was in this state of balance, when there was no longer haste or despair, that something new began to approach. An unexpected reunion, a seemingly casual message, a smile that would become a turning point. The universe seemed to prepare the scene perfectly, and Andy, without realizing it, was about to step into the moment she had written, visualized, and felt for 20 years. The day Andy reunited with Daniel seemed, at first glance, like any other day. The sun shone softly, and the breeze carried the scent of the sea she loved so much, as if all of nature conspired to set the perfect stage. She was walking through the coastal city center, enjoying a break from work to breathe, watch people, and connect with herself. Without warning, he appeared in front of her, exactly at the moment she looked up to admire an old bookstore. For an instant, the world seemed to stop. Andy's heart raced in a way she could never have imagined, and a mixture of surprise, joy, and recognition flooded her body. Daniel smiled, a calm smile, yet full of meaning. Their eyes met, and in that instant, no words were necessary. It was as if two souls recognized each other after years of waiting, as if every step of life had guided them exactly to that moment. The reunion was intense, yet calm at the same time. They walked through the city together, talking about everything and nothing, laughing at life's small coincidences. Andy felt every detail with almost magical clarity. The way he gestured, the tone of his voice, even the scent of his cologne. Every memory of what she had written at 9 seemed to manifest before her eyes, not literally, but in the pure essence of what she had always desired. It was then that she realized the law of attraction did not work merely as a sequence of events, but as a delicate dance between energy, intention, and surrender. In the days that followed, Andy and Daniel began spending more and more time together. Each meeting reinforced the bond that had existed invisibly for years. Andy noticed that the more she allowed herself to feel gratitude and love for what she was experiencing, the smoother the connection between them became. It was as if the universe were aligning every detail so that the fulfillment of the dream would not only be a physical meeting, but a profound emotional and spiritual experience. She remembered the words from the blue notebook, and every little coincidence, gesture, and glance seemed to confirm that life was following the script her soul had written 2 decades ago. Yet the manifestation was not complete. The coastal city was beautiful, but Andy still dreamed of the home she had described in her diary, a space that would be entirely theirs, full of memories and comfort. And it was precisely at this stage that faith and patience were tested once again.
Property purchases, financial adjustments, Daniel's career changes, and Andy's own projects created obstacles that seemed insurmountable. But unlike in the past, this time Andy did not panic. Each challenge was faced with serenity and confidence, knowing that if the universe had moved heaven and earth to bring them together, it would also find the way to complete everything. As the days passed, signs continued to appear. Small coincidences became increasingly evident. Places she had imagined visiting together, people crossing their paths opening doors, work opportunities that allowed flexibility to spend more time together. Andy realized that the secret was not just in wishing, but in maintaining the vibration of what she already felt as reality. Each day she expressed love, gratitude, and trust. The dream became more concrete, closer to materializing. Andy's internal transformation was visible. She was no longer the girl who merely wrote wishes, nor the anxious young woman fearing her dreams would never come true. She had become a woman capable of manifesting her reality, conscious of the power of her thoughts and feelings. And alongside Daniel, she began to experience the magic of a relationship that was both a reflection of her inner growth and the fulfillment of a promise made years before. One particularly memorable afternoon, while walking along the beach, Andy felt a lump of emotion in her throat. The waves broke gently and the sun set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Daniel held her hand, looked into her eyes, and spoke simple words filled with meaning. Every step up to this point was worth it. Being with you like this now is more than I could have imagined. Andy, tears in her eyes, realized that every part of the journey, every wait, every difficulty had been necessary for this moment to arrive in full intensity. She smiled and felt her heart explode with gratitude, understanding that the universe had not only fulfilled the promise, but had done so perfectly in every tiny detail she had written at 9 years old.
The big day arrived like a gentle breath from the universe, filled with signs that Andy recognized immediately. After years of waiting, visualizations, surrender, and small signals, the fulfillment of the dream she had written at 9 was about to reveal itself in its fullest form. She and Daniel had finally found the perfect place to live together, a seaside house that seemed lifted straight from her most vivid visualizations. The light-colored walls reflected the sunlight. Every detail of the decor resonated with what Andy had imagined so many times, and the scent of the sea filled the rooms delicately, bringing a sense of peace and belonging. As she stepped through the door, Andy felt a wave of emotion so intense it almost brought her to tears. Daniel held her hands, looking at her with the depth of someone who knows that everything they had lived up to that moment was worth every effort, every tear, and every instant of faith. In the days that followed, life in their new home became a true manifestation of everything written in the blue notebook. Every morning, Andy awoke to the sound of the waves and the sunlight streaming through the large windows. The little routines she had once imagined were now reality. Quiet breakfasts on the balcony, shared laughter with Daniel, personal projects finally gaining space, and friends becoming part of the story of a home built with love and dedication. The energy of the place seemed to amplify everything she had learned about gratitude, surrender, and manifestation. Every detail of the house, every gesture of affection, every simple moment reflected not only the dream of the 9-year-old girl, but also the growth, patience, and faith Andy had developed over 2 decades. As she watched Daniel taking care of small tasks and planning every corner of the new home together, Andy felt the law of attraction in its entirety at work. It was not just about obtaining what she desired, but about becoming a person capable of fully living the reality she had always dreamed of. She realized that the magic was not only in the arrival of the result, but in the entire journey she had traveled, the lessons she had learned, the faith she had maintained, and the surrender that allowed the universe to conspire in her favor. Every challenge faced, every doubt felt, every moment of patience and trust became the foundation for building this dream lived to the fullest.
The pinnacle of this realization came on an unforgettable late afternoon. Andy and Daniel walked along the beach by their home, feeling the cold sand beneath their feet and the soft wind on their faces. Daniel knelt, holding Andy's hand, and said, "Everything we've lived up to this point has brought us to this moment. I want us to continue writing our story together forever." Andy, tears of joy in her eyes, realized that every word written at 9, every visualization, and every sincere act of surrender had culminated in this moment of pure fulfillment. It was more than a dream come true. It was the materialization of a life built with faith, love, and alignment with the universe. And now, as we share this story, we want you to reflect as well. What dreams are you still carrying with you, those that seem distant or impossible? Remember, the law of attraction does not fail when faith is true, when gratitude is constant, and when you act with intention and confidence. Just like Andy, you can transform your life, achieve goals that seem out of reach, and experience moments that resonate with your deepest heart. If you were inspired by this story, leave a comment sharing the dream you wish to manifest. Share this video with someone who needs to believe in the power of the law of attraction. And don't forget to click on the next video, because we still have many more transformative stories waiting to show how lives can be completely changed when faith and action walk hand in hand.